Pilz. Some call me the Oracle. Some call me White Star. Pa'akwithal. Salal to Spokes. Tactically, White Star Eagle Visions. I earn these names traditionally. I'm a pipe carrier, a lodge keeper. I'm a prophecy teacher. Right now, as a species, we are going through this amazing revolution. And you're a part of it. You know, way back in 2012 when nothing happened, so much happened. But they forgot to tell you. They forgot to show you. I'm sure you recognize the whole world is in a real interesting place right now. And the prophecies are clear that the past is coming to an end, is being dismantled as gently as possible, but definitively being dismantled. And you, as a human, are becoming so much more than you used to be. New chakras, new frequencies, new energies, new awareness, new science. You want to keep up? Come hang out with me once a week. We're going to talk about some really interesting stuff. Weird is the new sexy, they tell me. So come on, let's get weird together. Matakwais. See you soon. Hi. Just allowing that just to kind of soak in here. What a crazy week I've had. How about you? Yeah, let's just scrub that real good. What a crazy week. The world's going to heck in a handbasket, isn't it, you know? Hi. White Star Teachings here again. It's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon here, West Coast Canada. I'm currently on Coast Salish, unceded territories, Burnaby. It's interesting. We're doing a lot of talk this last week about settling into maybe a new homestead, you know, coming up. I'm feeling that itch, you know, to settle into a space and create some land and community and, you know, create something, you know, again. A lot of you may or may not know I had gone into some car accidents over the course of the last couple of years. And it took me a moment to catch my breath and, you know, rebuild the body and the mind and all that stuff. And I'm at a point here right now where I firmly believe that it's time to anchor back in. Now, it's interesting when, you know, there's communities that crop up all over the planet. I mean, these things aren't new, you know, true pioneers. Of course, you know, me and my family's homesteaded, if you like, into, you know, Edmonton, Alberta, you know, Devon, in those areas there. And so, I mean, for the first 5 years of my life, a flushing toilet was, you know, something that happened in town, you know, and you knew how to use styrofoam seats in the wintertime because the outhouses were really cold. And so there was this relationship with the land. I remember being just a little kid, seriously, and the snow was taller than I was. In my snowsuit, I'd burrow through, and yeah, you know, the snow was literally taller than I was. And you had this relationship with nature that was, I don't know, for me anyway, it was my experience that was really profound. And so for me, that's kind of the draw. That's the connection, right? To, you know, I do really also appreciate being able to live off the land, you know, over my lifetime. And it started with, you know, my grandpa walking along on the ground, picking up weed and saying, "Hey, try this," you know, and it's like an idiot and trusting I did. And some things I liked and some things I didn't. But you know, that later continued when, you know, I ran into some medicine keepers and, you know, walking around in the woods, it's pluck here, try this. And like an idiot, I did and liked it or didn't, but it was a teaching and a learning. And I'm still in that process of learning, but you know, my last place that I was living, I was literally a cabin in the woods, right? It was powered by solar mostly. There was a generator, you know, I could fire things up if I needed to as a backup, you know, for sure. But I didn't want for anything. I had my, you know, big screen TV and, you know, my stack of movies, you know, and I had internet connection and my desk and, you know, 2 bathrooms. And when I use the word cabin in the woods, you know, I had all the coziness of, you know, all wood heats. And when I opened the taps, you know, literally natural, unpurified, unchemicalized, you know, spring water came out. And there was so much power and value in that living, you know, surrounded by the trees, you know, away from the congestion of noise and lights and, you know, all that stuff distracting me from, you know, being able to really anchor into the space. that was, kind of very, very, very close to paradise for me, specifically because my body, my being was able to anchor into a place and a space that was very clean in every way, including, 12-volt lights instead of, the 110, scenario, because 12-volt, doesn't penetrate the skin, whereas, stepping even into just the wires in the wall creates an electronic field that, most of us don't even pay attention to or even aware of. And that's just, the one wire, whether it's active or not, that's leading to one of those plugs in the walls, never mind the switches and all the other ones that are in that same room. And so you get a room all lit up, you've got it lit up all right. And we are experiencing, in that environment. It's interesting though, because as we're talking about community, there's a lot of folks out there who think that community, means it's time to stretch the hammock and just let, a Walt Disney movie unfold ahead of you, and the squirrels bring you the nuts, and what I'm saying, and everything just happens. No, actually, it's quite a bit of hard work. You're either going to be trading your time and energy in some way to get money so that you can buy the food and the stuff that you need, or you're going to put your own time and energy into creating the stuff that you need. You're not going to get it from somebody else. You're going to instead be creating it, manifesting it, growing it, foraging, hunting, etc., whether it's food, the water, the sewer, so many of these things that, certainly a person in the city would take for granted, suddenly become lifestyle. When you're out into a different space, or into much more rural, or even, deeper woods than rural, wilderness, dynamic. When you're, especially if and when you're carving a space out of the woods, right? Um, for me, it's, the first year that I'm in a space, I'm always, paying attention to what's growing locally. I pay attention to what's there for the first year, maybe even the first 2 years, to try and become a part of what's already there. You know, um, to be, rather than showing up with a typical colonized perspective of, I'm going to get here and build this whatever, for me, by me, and I'm bringing whatever it was that I'm trying to get away from with me. Have you noticed that seems to happen a lot with some of this mass migration, right? They're leaving there because they want to come here, because here doesn't have any of the BS that they have there, but they're kind of bringing the BS here, and so now we have it here too, right? And I can appreciate it's tough to shift gears, but I guess a part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, and what I've been thinking about here, is as we're getting to this place of, maybe it's time to start building community again. Maybe it's time to start inviting, and vetting out this, who wants to be my neighbor. Would you like to be my neighbor? Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Anyway, I don't have the perspective, and nor does my wife allow me to have the perspective of going and carving something out of the wilderness, anymore. We need something half done. We need something halfway, but where there's room to grow and room to settle. And we've got our eyes on a couple of different pieces of property, and literally around the planet. Everywhere from Canada, Hawaii, Mexico, Costa Rica. There's all these potentials. And so there's a part of me that feels an itch, feels a pull, feels a calling. There's something coming. I suspect a year from now I'll be broadcasting to you from a newer space. And that newer space will be the place that I'm making reference to today. And it's interesting because the whole world's shifting up. I'm talking about exchange for energy. It might come a time here very, very quickly where, say Safeway or Save On isn't providing me my foods anymore. Instead, I'm either providing it for myself, like I talked about earlier, putting that time and energy into actually producing food, having a personal relationship with my food, with nature, with these dynamics, rather than having a personal relationship with a cashier, right? And something else, is growing, your food, whether it's a truck grown, or it's anything of that nature, right? The problem is, you just never know. And when I'm talking about even harvesting and or foraging, which is different yet than, this wildcrafting perspective that I have towards my relationship with nature. The whole idea is when you step away from a patch, if for whatever reason, you think it's suffering, don't harvest anything. Instead, pour some energy into it, steward that space, for sure. Have this conscious relationship with your world, have this conscious relationship with your food source, have this conscious relationship with nature itself, and that kind of applies into everywhere we go. I know this month we're talking a little bit about conscious commerce also, plus this awakening process. And here I am yammering, and I believe we actually have Alana backstage. This lady is amazing. If she's backstage, please, welcome her out. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, there she is. Now,
can you hear me okay?
Oh, we can hear you amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure.
Everybody, meet Alana. Alana, meet everybody. Okay. I got to tell you, I had the distinct pleasure of watching, I would say probably the beginning of this woman's awakening. She was coming from kind of this world to that world. She all had it within herself, right? But I'm proud and honored, to be your friend. And, we don't talk every day, but we stalk each other all the time. This is the advantage of social media, right?
Yeah. We're never far apart.
Oh, totally. And we're never far apart, and we're always in each other's corner. And, you're part of my tribe, and, I know we're talking about conscious commerce and stuff like that. I know you're out there really helping a bunch of people recover from stuff they're dragging from, but you know what? I'm going to let you tell it. I know you're a bashful person, but I want you to spend the next couple of minutes just bragging. What are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
Like for example, you have this course right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I can.
Yeah.
All right. I can give an introduction. Yeah. And bring your listeners in to kind of have a sense of who I am and why I'm here. Yeah. Why I'm here in the big picture, but also how you and I connected.
Totally.
Yeah.
Please.
Sure. Yeah.
Please.
Well, thanks so much for having me here to talk and share my story, David, because you really were a pivotal part of that. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting chills just remembering that time in my life where I was feeling so lost and confused and having experiences that I couldn't make any sense of. But I was no longer denying them. I mean, really, my whole life I'd had experiences that I couldn't make sense of. And I wasn't in environments that supported me with making sense of them. So I just squashed them down. So that was happening my whole life. And then around about, I guess it's 8 years ago now, it kind of all came to fruition. And I was like, okay, this world just does not make sense anymore. And I need some support with this. So we were, I'd say, divinely guided together.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And and then helped me understand what I had always experienced. And then when I could validate, with my logic, what I was experiencing, it allowed me to drop even deeper into it and trust it more and more.
Totally.
So it's kind of high level.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, you came in to my space with such a high frequency going on, but no access to it, and certainly no ability to flex, right? So I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I didn't hand you any magic pill or any magic wand or cast a spell. I introduced you to you. And that authentic you started to shine and has become and has bloomed into the absolute biggest compliment to me is to see you helping other people. There's going to be people in your world that you're going to make a difference. You're going to change, save their life. They may not even know my name, and I still know that there was in some way, shape, or form I had my hand in there somewhere, and I know that that feeling too. There's that thing that, and I don't think everybody carries that either. Maybe you just haven't had a chance to taste it. You know what? I mean, I sound like an old guy when I say, I remember the day when, part of the payment for doing a good job was, you did a good job.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so I know I sound like an old timer here. I mean, Generation X, you know, kind of going on that way, but you know, I don't see a lot of that showing up in the world
Yeah.
today. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think even this, I mean, this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but what's just come up for me is even this differentiation or compartmentalization of work and life. You know, people talk about work-life balance. I'm like, what? Isn't work life? You know, and I am not a different person in my life as I am in my work. You know, there's no, I mean, I could go on and on about compartmentalization and how, as a Western society, we've put things in tight little boxes to our detriment. And I
Totally.
speak specifically of healthcare because that's where, you know, so much of my professional experience has been. But anyways, that's just kind of got me going on this thing. Like, yeah, work-life balance. Like what? And so, yeah, where is the self in the work? And so, like you're saying, I do my work, and I'm putting it in air quotes,
Yeah.
because that's what my soul is here to do. It's here to serve and guide and support others. And yes, money likely needs to be exchanged so I can feed myself and my kids, but that's not why I'm doing it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I've fought that mentality as well. I mean, that you kind of alluded to for a long time. I was an oracle. I was a professional psychic before it was cool. You know,
Mm-hmm.
back when you weren't supposed to be, you know, selling gifts, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, when you weren't supposed to be, you know, this is a God-given, a scenario, and you know, charging
Yeah.
for it is verboten, you know, Jezebel, etc.
Uh-huh.
I've received lots of grief over that in this lifetime, you know, for that scenario. And so there's always been
Yeah.
a balancing act that's there, right? To, you know, even just the dynamic of, you know, even, and also specifically within some of the indigenous teachings, right? To, you know,
Mm-hmm.
charging for a sweat. Oh my goodness, right? To, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
may lightning strike you, right? You know, kind of an idea. And
Mm-hmm.
yet there is money that gets exchanged within those communities too,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting balancing act because, you know, a body's got to eat. And that
Yeah.
for the longest time, just like I was talking about, for the longest time, it's been about Safeway, or, you know, if you want to go to an organic store, go for it, but you're still buying it from somebody. You know,
Mm-hmm.
very few people have
Mm-hmm.
the time
Mm-hmm.
or the
Yep.
energy even to grow a
Yep.
carrot.
Yep.
You know? And
Yeah.
so our world is different that way. And so here you and I and many of the viewers are showing up with this consciousness towards service, towards all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. You know, and you know, there's been plenty of organizations, and there are plenty of organizations that are built that way, but they're passing the cup around, you know, and or they're being sponsored by philanthropists, and or they're, you know, so there's this money coming from some space. You know, I'd like to hear maybe your advice towards that person who, you know, now we're independent, right? Now you're in that space of how do you provide for yourself simultaneously? Is right? You know, I'm saying the juggling act, and I know it's a juggling act because I live it every day too, right? You know,
Yeah.
how
I
are you
haven't quite found the sweet spot yet. You know,
doing?
the human life in Vancouver specifically is,
Oh my
you
goodness, yeah,
know, it's quite
yeah,
costly.
no,
So I'm still, you know, I'm trying to find that sweet spot as a human. You know, how do I serve my soul's purpose and live as a human? So it's tricky. I'm not quite there, and but I also really just trust.
it's
I
awesome.
trust. I trust to stay like, you know, when I look at different kind of like marketing strategies, etc., for my, you know, gifts or whatever we want to call them, you know,
Yeah,
just what my soul's here to do.
yeah,
Most of them do not align, you know, and so then I turn away from them, you know, in terms of like, oh, put this hashtag and put like, I just speak from my soul, and I trust.
mm-hmm.
I trust. So it's a leap of faith. Um, and I'm on the precipice. I still don't know if this is going to work out, but I'm just trusting. Uh, yeah.
You know, and you know what? That's the answer I give to myself when I look in the mirror too.
Yeah.
And that's the same answer I've been giving to myself for 35 years plus. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I sold 3 businesses to run away and join the circus to be an oracle, right?
Yeah.
To, you know, literally. And
Yeah.
those 3 businesses were not suffering.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure that I
Yeah.
was selling my kids' future, right? You know, there's no way
Yeah.
they're going to be able
Oh, I
to
just felt that. Yeah.
you know,
Uh-huh.
but I swear to goodness, it worked out exactly the opposite. There was so much
Yeah.
abundance in
Yeah.
everything, not just, you know, the money to eat with, right? But,
Mhm.
you know, the fact that my children got to witness their father, reach his purpose, right? To,
Hmm.
to really
Hmm.
shine, to really have an opportunity to show up, right? To, fullest
Yeah.
potential. Yeah. And
Yeah. Same, right? I walked away from my air quote comfortable position in healthcare.
mhm.
I had all, all the benefits, the security, all that stuff, vacation time. I mean, why is that even a thing? But it is, and yeah, it was comfortable and in many ways secure.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't, it was not secure for my soul. It was not secure for my body. And it became glaringly, I knew for a long, long time. So I was first a registered nurse. I worked as a nurse for 16 years,
What did you specialize in?
mostly in neuroscience.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so
Wow.
good understanding of the brain
Yeah.
and the nervous system, and then my body was telling me, I wouldn't have understood it as this at the time because I was pretty disconnected. But in
Yeah.
hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, my body was telling me this job is not for forever, and I didn't know exactly why, but I knew I needed to pivot. So I went back to school and I did my master's in counseling psychology, because I kind of knew at some level that that's really where my gift was kind of that the emotional support of people. And yeah, so I mean, I was getting so, but and then even as a therapist, I worked in healthcare. Well, pretty much until 3 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And then my body said, "Oh, I have to do that to stay here. Okay, I guess it means I'm leaving."
Yeah.
So universe gave me a really hard nudge, and I was being invited like even deeper into my soul work. I wouldn't say that the work I was doing there was not at all aligned with my soul. It was a bit,
Yeah.
but I was also really restrained. That the ways I needed to practice with clients had to be evidence based. You know,
Yeah.
all these rules and regulations around
And yeah.
how I could express my gifts and really
It's a
support people.
really funny world, isn't it? Right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, I know how to do massage therapy. I chose not to certify in it because as soon as you could become
Yep.
certified in massage therapy, any other modalities on the table are verboten. And
Yep.
if you've met me, I mean, I know you've been on my treatment table. I'm pure energy. I'm pure juice.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, I could have got myself into trouble by
Yeah.
showing up as a massage therapist. And
Yeah.
so, you talk about this, departmentalizing. In some cases, like even the medicines, even if they don't know what you've got, sometimes they'll prescribe you so they can at least put you into a box. Because once they get you into a box,
Oh,
they
sure.
can they can get the funding and they can maybe
Yeah.
move you from one box to another. But
Yeah.
there can never be this landing space of, well, we don't know, right? There
Yeah.
has to be a box. There has to be
Yep.
a place, an
Yep.
apartment. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
very
Yep.
interesting. Yeah.
And this is, so part of I know I'm kind of like taking little crumbs from parts of my journey,
Yeah.
and maybe it'll weave together and it'll make sense. But so part of my journey is also, well, one of the significant catalysts to my awakening was a diagnosis of a rare genetic disorder.
Oh,
And shortly afterwards, my dad died. And I'm just trying to remember if I started seeing you. Yeah, it was after those two things had happened. They were pretty close together, but it was after those two things had happened that I was just like, well, just days before my dad's death, he shared with me, "Life is for living." And then I was just like, I mean, it's a simple message, and
yeah.
probably could find it on a greeting card. I don't know. It's pretty simple. It's not that profound, but it dropped me,
Ooh.
boof, into my dark night of the soul. Like, am I really living? And the
Mm.
diagnosis I had is a genetic disorder of the connective tissue. So I had a disorder of connection.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, universe, you've put that healing message right in my DNA. I have to reconnect,
Mm.
right? I have to reconnect. I'm at the bottom of this dark night of the soul well, and my identity is just like collapsed. And I'm like, who am I anymore? Like mortality's like this, yeah. I don't know how my dad has just died. I don't know how long I'm going to live, or my degree of disability with my diagnosis. It was all uncertain. Not that life is ever certain, but it was all especially uncertain, right?
Totally.
And so then I was invited into a reconnection. And I examined all the ways in my life I had been disconnected from my heart, body, and soul. And there were many, like we were talking about earlier, like those kind of inklings or those knowings, those whisperings, those voices, those whatever that I had just cut off and shoved down because they didn't make sense. I was disconnected from that, you know? So how to come into greater connection. And that's when you came on board. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know the medicine that I offer. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And it's interesting because I mean, maybe I don't. You know, it's funny because each person is so different and so unique. You know, just like your own client, right? You know, each person that finds their way into your world, it's, you know, it's funny. I mean, a billion years ago, I had this argument with a psychic fair manager, and he was going on about how, you know, I should be just flipping these people, right? Because that's how people make money in this business, you know.
Right.
And you know, I mean, you know, one right after another, the turnstile, and I'm like, I can't do that. Maybe this
Yeah.
business isn't for me, right? So, you know,
Yeah.
I actually care about the people that you know, I mean, you know, I fell in love, Alana, I fell in love with you and your soul and your journey, and you know what I'm saying. And so I participate as much as I can, and I show up in every way that I can. So I can't do that just one right after another that
Yeah.
way. Not built for that.
Yeah.
And so instead, I built my business so that I spent that much more longer, but I charged a little more, right? You know, but it was always good value for dollar. It was always good service in exchange for, you know, that conscious commerce. You know, is always kind of been there, you know, in a big way. You know, very exciting. Now, I mean, speaking of conscious commerce, you're giving away a free webinar. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's conscious on your part, but it sure sounds like a great deal.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So, well, just to, kind of fast forward. So left healthcare. Because writing was on the wall. The universe said, now is the time. And I'm like, really? Leave all the benefits? Yeah. Leave all the benefits. Okay. Took the leap. So that was a few years ago. And so now I am still practicing as a psychotherapist. I definitely still have that, you know, 15 years experience as a psychotherapist, right? I can totally do that. And I am, and for many that meets their needs. And there are, you know, restrictions, limitations, regulations about, well, I can't fully bring forward all my gifts in that context, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not evidence-based. So I'm also working as a, I just grabbed a title out of the air, to be honest. It did feel kind of true, but so I'm calling myself a reconnection guide, because this is what I guide people through, is this reconnection with their heart, body, and soul. And I bring in, well, all the stuff I know about the human body and emotions and psychology and spirituality, now that I've had my own dark night of the soul experience. And so I weave those three together. And this is how I work with clients, and I work with them one-on-one. And I'm also on the brink of launching an online program. So an 8-week group coaching program. That's a paid for offer, because, you know, there's a lot of time and energy put into that. But I'm also, hosting free workshops, and I have one coming up on Thursday. And so it's just a tiny window into the ways I work with people. And so this workshop, I'm guiding people through the process of exploring those layers of self, those false layers of self, right? All the conditions, all the patterns, all the behaviors, all the who I thought I had to be, you know, in this world to be accepted. And, you know, and I come from, you know, that psychological lens. I have a good understanding of attachment theory, all this stuff. So I know, how and why we develop all these, you know, layers of conditioning. And so in this workshop, I guide them through starting to, well, look at those layers. Is this me, or is this what someone else thought I should be? Is this me, or is this what someone else thought? Oh, why did I think I had to be that way? Bring compassion to that. Oh, do I still need that anymore? Maybe not. Let it go. Who am I really? So this is the workshop. In this workshop, I guide people. It's just kind of high level, but I start to guide people through that exploration process. They can start to ask themselves the questions of, who am I really?
Oh, and that's huge. That's, you're kind of talking about shadow work, right? To, from a
Yeah.
this perspective, right? To,
Yeah.
boy, nothing but respect for that work, because you're right. It's got to be done with subtlety. It's got to be done with, I mean, you're treading in some pretty dark places there. Exactly. And so you have to bring the light, but you can't bring it so much that you're actually the medicine, because they're supposed to be
Yeah.
their own medicine, right? What,
Exactly.
such a dance, such a nuance, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting, because I'm hearing from you again, nice, psychology degree and all of this academia, and I know you as a high-minded person. Your genetics are much more Palladian than most people I know, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of, so it makes sense, the mental healer, right? Makes sense
Yeah.
to come in, through that lens and stuff. But again, what I'm hearing is almost shamanic,
Mm.
right? That's do you pull any, yeah, any, I don't know what I'm looking for, any spice, from a shamanic perspective of things? Or, I'm curious, because it is fascinating to me how similar it is.
Yeah.
And yet I know you as having this background within the clinical,
Yeah.
dynamic, within those protocols,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I definitely bring in, I mean, in this, 2-hour workshop, it's hard to bring it all in.
Oh,
Also mindful of the people that are coming in. I'm quite conscious of readiness of
mm,
people to receive certain messages. And so often, I mean, I know I've received the message now that I'm connected with guides. That's a, recent thing in the last 8 years. But now that I'm connected with my guides, I know with certainty I'm here as a bridge. I'm here to bridge people out of that kind of conditioned ego self into soul self. And so I'm very conscious and intentional
mm,
of not delivering information too soon. Right. And I
mm.
know you practice the same way, because I think you even said that to me once, like, kind of like, you'll know when it's time or something. I don't know if those were your words, right?
No, no, I know exactly what
Right.
you're making reference to. Yeah, for sure.
So starting in the head and starting with the psychology of it is usually a safer place to start,
Yeah.
And then getting into the body. Yeah. So the somatic. So what is it that your body's actually saying right now, and taking off like symptomatology. Let's not call it a symptom. It's just simply a message from our body. And so kind of teaching around nervous system, which is buzzword these days. I've been talking about it for a decade, but yeah, there's good
Yeah.
learnings there,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how is our body speaking to us? So head layer, body layer, and then soul layer. And so depending on readiness that I can usually feel, I bring in some of that soul talk, intuition talk, right? And what are some of the signs you're getting? What are, and starting to normalize the voices or the synchronicities, or, start to bring that onto people's radar. Yeah. Yeah. So that, I guess, I don't know if that answers your question, but how I bring in the shamanic, but yeah.
It totally answers the question. And
Yeah.
to be honest, what I was also able to, read, is that your demographic is
Yeah.
unique to you also, right? So,
Yeah.
you are attracting somebody who is going to meet you on those levels and in those terms, within that structure, within that protocol, that is different than, me dragging somebody into a sweat. You know what I'm saying? For
Yeah.
example, and
Because if they're
screaming,
coming to you,
you, you
then they
know,
kind of like, they're already there, right? They're already at that
right.
level of awareness, like to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think I'm attracting those that are curious and getting whisperings. I mean, I'm attracting who I was 7 years ago,
I hope,
right?
because
Yeah.
there's learning in the teaching, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And that's the kind of what I was deriving from this. And there's actually two directions I want to go here. And one is we attract our own people, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you're vibrating authentically, you're automatically going to attract your people to you.
Yeah.
You don't want all the people,
No,
and so
I'm
even the
not here for
marketing.
all the people.
Exactly. My
Yeah.
people and your people are different
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so a part of walking your authentic person, you kind of have to make up your mind if you're gonna keep up with McDonald's, or if you're gonna be a chef, right?
Yeah.
And it's obviously, I implore everybody, be a chef instead.
Yeah.
Vibrate your own authentic
Yeah.
tune and your own vibration, your own recipes, your own everything, and you'll attract your people to you.
Yeah.
And those are the people that typically are, again, just like she said, are people that are going through something you've very likely just recently learned yourself.
Yeah. I'm just a few
Oh,
steps ahead. It's not ahead. It's not a race, but you know what I mean?
totally.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew how many times I've turned to a client and said, "Can I borrow your that recording?"
Right?
Just because I
I just
know
need
this
to
might
remind
help again.
myself of what I just said, right? Yeah. I'm the same. Yeah, we are our own medicine. We are our own
Oh,
medicine. And this is where I guide those that I work with is really into themselves. I mean,
yeah.
that's what this is all about, reconnecting with themselves for their own guidance. I'm just there to maybe shine a light or hold their hand, but they know better than I do their
Mm,
medicine. It's in them, right? Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Now, the tools, yeah, the somatic tools, for example, are you a kinesiologist? Do you play with that at all in any way, shape, or form? And just
No.
for our listeners, kinesiology is muscle testing. Ultimately,
Yeah.
you can. The universe abhors a lie. It won't actually feed energy into an untruth, if you like. Okay, so
Hmm.
kind of the
Hmm.
way muscle
Hmm.
testing works is,
Yeah.
and sometimes they do it for allergies. They hold your arm out, and and my name is David. I should be able to hold my arm out, and if I say my name is Sue, I won't have enough strength, and it
Right.
means
Yeah. Yeah.
touchdown.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
there's this muscle testing kinesiology dynamic that people can also use too.
Yeah.
For
I'm
sure.
familiar with it. I
Yeah.
practice it a little bit myself, but I'm not at the point where that's what I guide people through.
Yep.
Yeah.
And instead, and again, I heard you when you said that what you're doing is you're allowing, because people's bodies are going to talk to you. People are going to show you where the alley is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pain is actually our friend, right? And any
Oh
good
yeah,
nurse is going to tell
absolutely.
you that, because the pain is telling you where it's broken and it needs some attention,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
without it, we would consistently be injuring ourselves
Yeah.
because we wouldn't, and so
Yeah.
pain is our
Yeah.
friend, fear is our friend sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I can appreciate your training in that world. It again empowers you to dissect and, yeah, I dare say, departmentalize in a way that's actually probably a little bit more efficient sometimes. you know,
Yeah.
totally.
Well, you know what, in the Western system, we know how they pathologize everything about being
Mm,
human. All humans' emotions are pathological with a pharma med for that, right? So, and so I do not come from that lens. I guide people to become curious about how the message that they're receiving emotionally or physically might actually be there to serve them. You know,
mm,
and
mm.
so I work somatically. I kind of guide people into the wisdom of their bodies. I maybe pepper in some German new medicine. Yeah. So
Ah,
just starting to open people to the awareness that our bodies are wise. They're not out to get us. And the messages, aka symptoms, but try to get that term out of there. The messages we get are to support our well-being. They're just guiding us into our well-being. And so nervous system, especially since it's buzzword right now, it's kind of helpful because people are on board with that learning usually, and it can be really helpful for people to even just understand, like, oh, I'm feeling anxiety, that's because my amygdala has been activated, because and so then I'm going to have this sympathetic response, and then my heart rate's going to increase, and then it's going to be hard to think, and then so even just to physiologically understand what's happening, automatically that depathologizes it. Right. It's not a wrong thing. It's actually a
oh,
protective thing. Right. Yeah.
totally, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then anxiety is no longer a crippling diagnosis. It's like, okay, I'm really sympathetically activated. What am I really afraid of? And it's often our own thoughts. Right. But so yeah, this is the way I kind of bring body into it, that kind of scientific nervous system understanding, and then depathologizing it and feeling into the friendliness of our bodies, the wisdom of our bodies.
Totally. Well, then we become the observer in some cases rather than the participant, because
Exactly.
when you're participating, that alchemy set takes control, right?
Yeah.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be so conscious of the language we use about our bodies, saying that it's wrong. Why is my body doing this? All that. I mean, it just further exacerbates the fear response. And then we become further disconnected from our body when it's really just trying to send us some really valuable messages.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oh, amen. Totally.
Yeah.
As you know, I've gone through a healing
Yeah.
protocols myself last 5-7 years, whatever it is, and I have learned through the mirror of talking to so many other doctors and other specialists that there are very few people who are actually in tune with their body.
Yes.
You know, I'm acutely in tune of what's going on when someone's working on one meridian on one end of my body. I can sometimes feel the activation in another part of my body, and you know, sometimes I'll even say so, right? And you know, when we consult the charts, wouldn't you know, they are connected. But you know, it actually is surprising to me because that's just my normal life. That's just who and how I am, right? So you know, I know when I'm down a vitamin. I know when I'm, you know, requiring more sunshine. I know when I'm, yeah, you know, I'm saying I have this relationship with my body. And I think that's a part of the spiritual mechanism, to be honest, that in so many cases gets left behind as well. Because one of the things I honor about your journey is that you didn't want to leave your body behind. You know, I'm saying there's this, all of me has to show up, and that I witnessed in your blooming that was really quite unique. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is because you're really, without following the medicine wheel, you're still looking for balance, right? You know, you're still looking to fulfill. I mean, and do so through this lens of academics, and it's, you know, love it. I just do.
I mean, I wanted to reconnect with my body. Well, it wasn't even a want. It was my soul was just telling me you have to, or you're going to basically die, like either a soul death or anyways. So I knew I had to reconnect with my body. My whole life I had been experiencing, so also messages, right? Symptoms in my body. We could call it pain. Yeah, lots of different things in my body, lots of weird and wacky experiences, near-death experience when I was 9 years old. But all these things were like, I was told that they weren't true, that they weren't happening. And so then I disconnected from my body because I was like, I guess I can't trust this thing that's happening to me. I can't trust it. So I became disconnected.
Fascinating. Totally. Yeah.
So my soul journey has been coming back into it.
So what about, and this may be completely off, you know, topic, and you know, you don't know nothing about it, but any conversation or what about fibromyalgia?
Oh yeah, I've been diagnosed with that.
Yeah, I mean, just because that one is such a dance out there, isn't it? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, some doctors don't even acknowledge it, and some they're so quick to jump on it, and yet it is this effervescent kind of a thing. I've read things about, you know, it starts in the hands. I've read other things. It's a reaction, of course, to a muscle damage or a trauma response. You know what I'm saying? You know, I it's kind of all over the map here, and I'm curious to how, because I'm really seeing you're playing in the space that, as far as I'm concerned, it shows up. Does that make sense? You know, I believe fibromyalgia shows up in exactly what we're talking about here now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I mean, I've been diagnosed with a whackload of different things, and that is one of them. And I create a lot of distance between myself and my diagnoses. I mean, depends on the circles I'm in. Maybe they need that bridge. Maybe I need to use that language to bridge them in, right? And for that experience to be validated, because often it hasn't been. And and this is typically the clients that I work with who have a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. And so to just as I was talking about, you know, to kind of bring them back into the wisdom of their bodies and what is their body telling them. And when we're in a state of contraction, you know, tension, we're likely sympathetically activated. And it's no coincidence that many people with these diagnoses are type A personalities, high stress, right? And so, high stress, high achieving. So going back into childhood, you know, when did these patterns first start to develop? What was it that, you know, usually in the interaction with parents that kind of set this course for, I need to achieve, I need to excel for love, for attention, for attachment and connection. And so as we start to kind of pull out those roots, right, the symptoms, the pain, the tension, the sympathetic activation starts to soften, right? Yeah. So, I mean, these diagnostic labels have their place.
Yes.
And when I was given the many I've received, there was an initial feeling of like validation, vindication, like, see, I told you there was something.
I know exactly.
Right?
Recently in this last month, I went in and started playing the hearing thing.
Yeah.
You know, experienced since my first accident some ear ringing and some vertigo occasionally, right? You know,
Hmm.
I was able to jump on with the Epley technique and actually
Oh
work with
yeah.
vertigo quite successfully, actually. But it was still only a band-aid, and I knew that, right? And
Mm.
so I only just recently, because every other part of my body is healing, but that isn't. You know, that's not recovering as quick as I'd like.
Mm.
And so I did some hearing tests and stuff. And wouldn't you know it, it came back that yes, indeed, there is some damage, you know, from the
Yeah.
accidents that
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to, in my world, be able to recover back. Does it make sense?
Mm.
Some damage is just, you know, and
Sure.
even then I says, have you met me? You know, but what's so powerful about it is that it literally gives me now the specific frequencies and octaves that my hearing is missing. Now I'm going to go back to my tuning fork kit, right? You know, and play with the PEMF mat and a couple of other
Yeah.
tools that I have at my disposal. And I'm going to do my best to address those specific frequencies,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yep.
now this is medicine, right? Yeah, you know, but it doesn't have anything to do with this pill or, you
Yeah.
know, it. And
Yeah.
so it's fascinating. I really, again, I want to throw that out there because, again, this is medicine. We
Yeah.
know that, you know, the eggs, the med beds, the, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're literally here. I mean, it's just about becoming much more available, you know, to the planet, and they're getting better all the time. Yeah, you know, for sure. Is there room in that technology and in that frequency for where you're playing as well? Yeah, you know, and I'm talking about light and frequencies. The egg, for example, here in
Mhm.
Vancouver, I was able to sit in this egg-shaped container, like on a lazy boy chair almost, right? And they bombarded me with the light and the frequencies and all that stuff. And, you know, basically it's supposed to have an impact on neurology. It's supposed to have an impact on, you know, but again, sound and light and vibration itself,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, do you play with any of that stuff in your world?
No, not yet.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
okay.
not yet.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
it's I mean, this is just so cool because it's just you unzipping somebody. Basically, you dive in there, right? You know, and
Yeah.
you heal them up, and you do your very best to help them. You know, in that moment, in that
Yeah.
time to get where they need to be, you zip them back up, and that's medicine, right?
Yeah.
You know, honest to goodness, and
Yeah.
it, and the whole point I'm trying to prove here, of course, is to our viewers and what have you, is that, you know, medicine doesn't necessarily mean operations. Medicine doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily
exactly.
mean more
It's
pills.
almost
You know,
yeah, it's almost like medicine TM, you know, like medicine has been so well, the word that just came in was captured, right?
mm-hmm.
That only certain people with certain titles and coats can
Oh,
practice medicine. And I say this with love and respect for those
yeah,
practicing medicine because I have people in my life that do, and I was a nurse, so I yes, not to devalue what they offer, and that is not the only way to practice medicine.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Correct. Totally. You know,
yeah.
I spent some amazing years. Even myself dancing with Western medicine. I've
Mhm,
done, you know, speaking engagements. You know, to pediatric oncology symposiums.
mhm,
You know, I spent like 15 years working with midwives. You know, who
mhm,
were bringing water birthing into the hospitals. You
mhm,
know, and you know that project was so successful. Stony Plain, Alberta, built a whole
mhm,
wing with water birthing tubs in it because it was such a successful program,
yeah.
right? So I am seeing where, you know, medicine, just like everything
Well,
else, is evolving. You know, it's interesting. We do demonize some of it, but on the other hand, here
don't.
we've looked at on this program already, even just some of the value that it brings to the table, right? So, yeah, you
Yeah,
know, for and
yeah.
so it's interesting. It's almost like, you know, guns don't kill people; people kill people with guns. You
Hmm.
know, and medicine used appropriately,
Yeah,
no matter what direction it's going to show up in, is valuable,
yeah.
right? You know, for sure. But medicine, you know, used in a corrupt manner
Yes.
is
Yeah.
dangerous, right?
And I think we're at a tipping point in society right now. When humanity, we're seeing, oh, like the veil's been lifted. Oh, okay, maybe a lot of the ways that medicine has been practiced has been corrupt,
Oh,
right? From a place of ego, from a place of power and control, right?
well, we know most of the medicine that's practiced today basically comes from
Yes.
pharmaceutical institutions. Universities were built upon opium, Chinese money, right? You know, etc. It's actually obvious if you take a look at the the dynamics of it, and they've been creating this. But at the same time, right beside it, the technology, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, has been
Yeah.
awesome. Like they
Yeah.
can see right inside me. You know, when I got into my car accidents, I loved that they could see right inside me. You know, here, lay down here, let me take a few pictures of you. And okay,
Mhm.
no broken bones, but we can see here something happened when you were 4, right? So, you know, I
Mhm.
loved the fact that we could, there is this technology and there is this,
Mhm.
these advancements taking place, right? So, you know, for
Mhm.
sure. On the
Yeah.
other hand,
It's not, yeah, because I think this is, sorry, I cut you off. Can
no
I share
worries.
something that just came in?
Yeah.
I think it, like, when we're in that ego mind, we're so prone to black and white thinking. It's this or it's that. And we've seen that no matter, I mean, so the last 4 years have been, right, intense. These discussions have become very polarized. And no matter what side of the discussion you sit on, there are people who, yeah, take that black and white approach, right? So saying all of Western medicine is terrible, well, like, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. There are shades of gray,
Oh,
right? And
totally.
so, when we get into that fear brain thinking, again, talking about nervous system, that's just what happens when we're in fear brain thinking. We go into black and white, right? Because it's easy. We go into easy thinking, right? And so we go into black and white. This is good and that is bad. So I think, yeah, I think as we start to come back together as a collective, those shades of gray, those nuances, and being discerning is so important. Yeah, so not all medicine is bad, right? Not all of Western medicine is bad. And there are some aspects that maybe, yeah, we should
Greg, give
use
me
some discernment.
yeah, totally, right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, and yeah, my experience as well. Like I remember being sent to a physiologist, and this physiologist, and he was using the laser, on some of the injuries, whiplash injuries, and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And being who I am, I mean, if you're gonna point a laser at me, I got to know what's going on. And
Yeah.
so I went in with all this information and all this, about the kind of laser that I'm looking for. It needs to penetrate past the 2.5 inches, or else it's kind of just crap anyway. And da da da
Okay.
da. The different light spectrums and how they show up differently and have a different response, from the body. And
Hmm.
I showed up, and I, honest to goodness, wanted to have a really cool conversation with this guy. He explained to me after his eyes glazed over, once I even started, he says,
Yeah.
I look on the chart and it says, point this thing at your neck. And if the machine's broken, I phone the number. That's what I know about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
there's those hiccups too, right?
Yeah.
Showing up. And,
Hmm.
I dare say this was a nice enough guy, but he wasn't showing up with the kind of passion I'm seeing in your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe it wasn't that sole place,
oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It was maybe a job, you know?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah,
And not to
exactly.
say that there isn't maybe the potential for his soul to be more called into the work.
Yeah.
But I know I am much more lit up in my work now than when I was working for the health authority in the role that I was in. And not to say that my soul wasn't there at all, it was,
Totally.
but it just wasn't dropped as deep, because I couldn't fully express and practice in the way that my soul is guiding me to, because I had to be, careful with the things I said. Yeah.
There's something about that. Like honest to goodness, you are brighter now than any day I've ever seen you. Right? You're showing up. You're a guiding light, right? To in a good, healthy way. And even just as you speak, there's this vibration that's showing up. Does it make sense, right? And so I know that you're in that place, and a part of the reward for you is doing a good job.
Mm.
Right? So, actually showing up and helping people is part of the reward for you. I
Oh
hope
yeah.
you make I hope you make $1 billion an hour doing it. Right?
I'd be
And
happy just if I can pay my rent in Vancouver. That's
yeah,
good.
truly, exactly, right. Um, but ultimately, what I'm suggesting is I want nothing but success for you, right? Because we who are meeting you we feel your medicine, right? And it's so far beyond just this particle, this pill, this dynamic. What you do requires a lot of trust, and requires a lot of things. Actually, we have some here. Do you know what RLS is? RLS.
RLS.
It's asked by one of our viewers.
Yeah, I'm seeing that pop up, and now my medical terminology brain is shutting down for a sec. I'm.
It's not fair because Shay is a nurse too. I know her. She's one of
Oh,
my students, actually. It's totally
right,
so.
right.
Yeah, but
Maybe she could type it out and jog my memory.
yeah, totally.
Because again, I don't usually focus on the labels. It's more the messages that the body's
Yeah,
sending, right?
yeah, totally.
And part of my medicine is do I even call myself a healer? Like, what is healing? Is there an end road? I don't think restless leg syndrome. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Part of my medicine is not about healing, period, right? Because healing is a journey.
Uh-huh.
And so I guide people into how to be with and not just fighting or fixing or getting rid of.
Yeah.
And when we be with, when we've listened to the alarm bells of like shooting pain in hip, whatever, when we be with it, then it's like, oh, you're with me. I can turn the alarm bell down a little bit. But when we're in a place of resistance, I don't want that there. I need to fix it. I need to cure it. I need to get rid of it. Well, then we just perpetuate this internal war and sympathetic activation, right? Coming back to the nervous system, which only flares it up even more. So I guide people how to be with. So yeah, I have this diagnosis, long letters, lots of words. Yeah. And I could say on one level, I experience pain all the time. Sure. Okay. Yeah. And I know it's a message from my body, and then it's guiding me, to do something differently or to care for myself more, to come into greater compassion, to breathe, And so am I cured from all these diagnoses? I mean, no. No. Yeah. I still receive a lot of the same messages in my body, but now I just know how to be with them. Totally. So anyways, that's kind of a long-winded answer to have I, help everyone heal, but that's
perfect. It just is, right? I appreciate all that you shared. It actually, to be perfectly honest, it takes me now to the place I want to ask about, is there any way to cure those, now that I'm 57, I'm making old man noises getting off the chair, right?
Yeah.
Any way to fix those? Again, what's that message?
Right, yeah, what's the message? What's the message you're getting, right? How to be with these human bodies.
Just what you said, which is it's telling you that you have to do something slightly different. Does that make sense?
Right.
I can't just bound off the chair and rush across the room. I have to make sure that my feet are under me and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it's just it's not even a bad thing, but it's about the listening, right? So, totally, and so when I was listening to you, so it's like, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, because I heard my dad make those noises too, right?
Yeah.
Totally,
Well, and as souls in these little human meat suits, like they, they do have a bit of a shelf life, so we gotta kind of listen to them, and care for them. They're our temple, and not be at war with them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I do appreciate, and again, that mind-body connection has been such a powerful part of my life, not just through my own personal healing process here, but I really believe it. In order to achieve that metaphysical presence and awareness, you really have to understand this particles that you are also. You can't just separate the two in, like you said, light scenario, right? So many people, even just the aura, so many people think it's this bubble that follows us around, but yet it's constantly flowing, it's constantly motion, it's constantly interacting with our world around us, and so very cool.
This compartmentalization. Just one more thing. I know we're coming to an end here, but just one more thing I want to say about that as it was coming in. I am encouraged that these conversations talking about soul, talking about body, like somatic, all that starting to it's coming into mainstream more and more, which is very encouraging. And I also see I am seeing it happen again, that compartmentalization of the body work or the soul work or the psychological work, right? Mm-hmm. But we're not these distinct little containers. We are a full being. So, yes, we're souls, but we're also in a human body. And so I see a lot of bypassing happening, you know, a lot of bypassing of the human experience, just going way up into the crown and above, right? And ignoring the body, or only staying in the body, but ignoring the soul, or only staying in the emotions. So I think, and this is one of the, I don't claim to be an expert in any of these three areas, but I think this is what I offer that's a little bit different than some, is that I do integrate all three.
Exactly.
Right.
Boom. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Exactly. Because
Yeah.
that is what we see in you. Exactly. Right. You know, and that is true healing. So,
Yeah.
you know, but it takes work. You can integrate it, you can guide it, and you can referee it even. Yeah. You know, in some sense,
Yeah. I like that. Referee it. Yeah.
you know, but it really is them doing the work, right? So, you know, they still got to play the game and work it out and stuff.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing that I get really excited about, obviously, is, you know, we've been so conditioned into quick fixes, right? So conditioned, even, and even that, even like bleeding into like, I'm just going to do this nervous system boot camp and be done with my childhood trauma. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is the long game. Healing is a long forever game. Like, it's a forever game. It's a moment by moment game. We're not going to get it done in 6 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. And that's, I know that's kind of going against the stream these days, because people have been so conditioned, especially by Western med, pop a pill, quick fix. I'm done with this healing thing. I don't have to do anything else. I can just pop this pill. Yeah, I have no responsibility.
You're not wrong. Exactly. Right. You're not wrong at all. As a matter of fact, the not responsibility, the no accountability, you know, people literally will challenge their health on purpose because they're actually believing that pill will rescue them.
Yes.
You know, I can do whatever I want to this poor thing. I got that pill will look after me. Right. You know, totally. Who cares if I get a jammer? Right. They'll just fix me. Right. You know, yeah, no, totally. You know, and it's so it's not only
taking
just
that radical responsibility for your own healing and your own body, and not outsourcing our wisdom.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I'd love to, if you don't mind saying your website out loud. Just lots of people who listen to us without actually saying.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can also add a link. Would that be helpful?
That'd be wonderful. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'll add a link if I can figure out how to do that. Chat. Where do I do it, David? Where do I add a link?
If you put it in the chat room, definitely. Oops.
Be a chat room. Hang on, I'll figure that out. Okay, so but my link, if people want to check out my website, it's well, who did that so fast?
that would be Carrie, our backstage producer.
Oh my gosh, you're so fast. You're so good.
I want you to say it out loud just so that people.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So my website is my full name, alanajoynewton.com. And on the website, if you're interested in joining that free workshop, again, it's on Thursday, virtual. Right. Yeah, Thursday at 1 p.m. If you go to the up at the top tab, the masks we wear. Yeah. So you can sign up for that. And 2-hour virtual session that I guide people through, starting to explore those layers of self.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. I mean, an hour isn't enough.
I know. I can do even after hours discussion. I mean, I could go on and on about this stuff.
Totally. We just got warmed up. So you're going to have to come back.
Yeah.
And we're going to dive into this again.
Cool.
You know, very interesting. I should almost do like a whole month or two just on the medicines around the world, right? You know, honest to goodness.
Cool.
If you're looking for someone to help you do the work, who's going to bring, you know, that left and the right brain kind of coming together in a good way, I can't recommend any. You know, and I've personally witnessed her go through her own transformation and bloom into this amazing person that she is today. And, you know, the fact that she's walked it, you know, and I witnessed it, you know, more than even.
You supported me. You were holding my hand.
Totally. But in the witnessing of it, I realized that you now know which footsteps other people can follow you, right? You know, other people can, and just like in martial arts, there's learning and the teaching. And I couldn't be thrilled more that you're in this position of teaching other people how to, you know, achieve that, you know, for sure. Because this is the time for it to happen, right?
Yeah, this is the time. I just have to close with one more thing because it dropped in, so I'm going to share it. So around the time I was working with you, I was coming into my 40th birthday. Is that right? I don't know if that math totally adds up. But anyways, and I remember you saying you're right on time.
Aho.
This is right on time. Yeah. 2000. Is that math right? Anyways, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was turning 40 in 2000. Yeah.
I love it. Right on time.
Right on time. Well, what do you mean? And now I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're going to see you next week. Make sure you stalk Alana and show her all the support that you can, and tap in. There's good medicine there.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. Always good to connect with you. And thank you to the people that connected and listened either live or afterwards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
To be continued.